Hello YouTube. Today we are going to customize Material UI. If you work for a company that already has an identity, usually they want to keep that identity across all the applications, including new applications. That identity can be as simple as some colors, or it can go much deeper. So today we are going to analyze the Material UI themes and how we can customize them. If we look into the default Material UI theme, you can see that you have some colors over here in palettes. So if we click here to open the palette, you can see that we have a primary color that we can override, we have a secondary color that we can also override, and you have a lot more colors, like for example the errors, the warnings, the multiple shapes of gray. So in terms of colors, I would say you are completely safe with Material UI. Then the next thing I really love about Material UI is the ability to override specific CSS styles of our components. For example, let's say that you want all the buttons to have 30 pixels of font size. Well, using the overrides, this one over here, it's really easy, and we will do that in a moment. Then you can also use props, and this is another one I really love. If you watch my previous videos, you probably noticed that in buttons, I was always passing the variant as contained and the color as primary. And that works really great if you are in a simple demo. But imagine that in your application you need to have 100 or 200 buttons. Having to pass that every single time to all the components can become a bit tedious, right? Also, some other companies, probably don't like the fact that on Material UI, when you click on a button, it does that ripple effect. So you can also pass that ripple effect to false. So all your buttons in the application don't have the ripple effect. And those we will do using props. So without any further ado, let's jump into VS Code. Over here, we have the example from our previous video, our multi-step form. So we will do all the changes inside this theme.tsx file. The first one we are going to do, it will be the colors. So let's change the palette on itself. And the first color I want to change is the primary color. Let's say that for our primary color, I will say it's red. It will be probably a bit too aggressive to our eyes, but at least you see it changing everywhere, right? So everything that uses the primary color is now red. For example, our checkbox is still purple, and you may be asking, why is it still purple? Well, from Material UI, the default theme, they set the primary as the blue palette and the secondary as the pink palette. There are a lot of palettes already created from the Material theme for you. If your company luckily has exactly that palette, you are ready to go. You don't even need to do much of the customization. You can just import those palettes from Material UI itself. All right? I know they have the green, the orange, the pinks, so they have quite a lot of colors. Okay? So in your case, if you really need to, you can define a lot of the shades over here. For example, you can say the A200, it will be this specific color of red. Okay? So you have a lot of customization in terms of color. Let's just change now the secondary for you to see. And let's say that the main color will be, for example, green. All right, so RGB, so we will say it's green. So when I click over here, you will see that now my checkbox is green. So as you can see, we changed quite easily the colors across all our application, changing only the theme in Material UI. The next thing we can change is the typography. And usually companies, they are really attached to a specific font style. So we can come over here and say the font family is, for example, Comic Sans MS. So if you are from the 90s, 80s, 90s, you probably worked with MSN Messenger, and a lot of people were using this font family over there. So you probably remember this one, right? If not, it's okay. Now, let's say that you just want to change a specific element. And in Material UI, you know that you have the H1s, H2, H3, 4, 5, and 6. Then you have the captions, the figures, the body 1 and body 2. This thing I have here in the personal data is a body 2. So let's say that I want to change just the body 2. Okay, so body 2 will be, for example, font family of Times New Roman, which is another famous font family. So when I do that, you will see that now the personal data will have a Times New Roman, which is probably what you want. You can even change the font size of that one and say that it's, for example, 2 rems. It will be too big, so I will just remove them in a second. But as you can see, we can completely change how the typography looks in Material and customize to your own company. All right, so this one I will just put to 1.1 because at least it's not completely ugly. It's enough that the colors are already ugly, right? So the typography, as you can see, you can also change completely the typography in Material. The next step that some companies usually force you to change is the border radius of your elements. If you look around here, my buttons, my cards, everything has some kind of border radius in Material. I think it's 4 or 5 pixels of border radius. I'm not sure on that one. But they always have some border radius. And some companies, they want it to be completely a flat square or a 90 degrees angle. So you can come over here and say border radius to be, for example, 0. Right? So when I refresh now, you will see that the button is completely squared out right now. You can go to the completely extreme example and say, I want a border radius of, for example, 30. And you will see that my button and my card now are super round. It's up to your company, actually, what you use over here in this one, right? So the next thing that we can probably change is the spacing. And the spacing over here, it can be 8 pixels by default in Material. If you watch any of my previous videos when I'm doing theme.spacing, I always say that 1 unit is usually 8 pixels. I worked with a lot of teams that they prefer it to be 10 pixels just to be easier for them to do the calculations. For today, I will just put 20 because that way you will see how big the distance between my footer, not my footer, my header and my card will be. So I will now save and it will refresh and you will have a big gap between the two. So every time that now you use spacing, the theme.spacing, it will start to be 20 pixels each unit. It can make sense if you want to change it across your application. You can have 2 themes in your Material UI. So one theme is the dense theme. So you say the spacing for example, 5 pixels. And then you have a theme where you say the spacing is, for example, 10 pixels. So the elements have a bit more room to breathe, if you so desire, right? Let me just put that back to 8 pixels. I will not remove, so when I do the commit, you can see that one. And now we will start to touch places that I think are much more interesting than these basic ones, which is the overrides of components. So let's come over here and we can say the overrides, and now the first properties we have over here will be the components itself. So let's say that we will go, for example, for our Mu button. All right, and in our Mu button, you can see even with autocomplete, right? Let me just save this for our page, go back to the top. So over here, you can even do autocomplete, and you can see that one of the properties will be the root, because that's one of the classes. So if I really want to override the root of my component, I can even say something like, oh, you know what? The text transformation is always uppercase, and most companies, at least the ones I worked with, they usually don't like the buttons to be always uppercase. So we can say something like text transformation, and we can say that the text transformation will be none. So we are not touching the text. Whatever you put is whatever we are using. We can even go to our component where we have that next value. So if I scroll to the bottom, I think our next value is somewhere here at the bottom. We can even say, for example, the X in capitalized way. So now you will see that the next in the button is also capitalized. So that's good, right? Let's just close this one, and I will do one more thing that you can see how it works that way. So let me go over here to the bottom again, and let me just pass a full width to this component, right? And I can also say in the full width of the component that the grid item is XX12, right? And so now our button, our next button will be full screen, and that's okay. Imagine that you want to override that, right? So when you do that, Material UI will put a class called full width. So let's go over here to our theme once again, And over here, we can say that we are not overriding the class root. We are going to override the class full width. And for the class full width, let's say that we want max width to be, for example, 300 pixels. So when I save this one now, you will see that my button is at most 300 pixels because I'm overriding a class inside Material UI itself. And this can be quite powerful. You can even say that on the root, you can say that all your buttons, for example, will have a padding of, I don't know, 10 pixels. It can be more, it can be less, depends once again on your company style, right? But now I have 10 pixels of padding in all my buttons. I can say 20 pixels of padding in all my buttons. So you can see how you can transform the button completely. Now we can look into something that it's even nicer than the overrides, which is the default property values for components. So let's go over here, and after the overrides, I will start to put props, right? And when we use props, it will be similar in terms of the first level of the object. Okay, so the first level of the object over here, we can say new button. And now what we have inside this new button, it will be the default properties. So for example, this button, when I click, you will see a ripple, right? You saw the ripple in that button, right? So instead of having the ripple, imagine that in your company, people hate the ripple or is not even in the style guide. So you can come over here and say, disable ripple to be true. So you don't need to say this anywhere else in your application. And now when I click, there was no ripple whatsoever in that button, which can be great for you. Another thing that I'm putting everywhere, let me show you once again, is this color primary and type equals to, the variant equals to contained. Let me remove those two, and you will see that the component will go back to the normal values of the button, right? So my next button is now the completely normal button in Material, but I can come here to my theme.tsx, and in my theme.tsx, I can just pass those again. So I can say variant to be contained, and basically the next one, I don't even remember what we were doing. The color is primary, right? So let's say the color is primary. So when I save this now, we will change the color and we are back to where we were. And now we don't need to define that in every single button we do, which is great, right? One of the last things that you may need in your company, and trust me, you will probably need that in your company, is the text fields on itself. A lot of companies say that the text fields from Material remembers too much Android and it's too much connected with Google. So some companies will not want to use those animated text fields that go up and down, like these ones. When you click, they go up and down and things like that. They also usually don't like when you click here, you saw the ripple on the checkbox. And like we deleted the ripple on the button, we can come here and say, for the props, we will say mu checkbox. All right. And in the mu checkbox, we can say the same thing. So disable ripple. It will be to true. So now when I save, I go back to my checkbox and you will have no ripple in my checkbox. Let me click again. And you saw there was no ripple in my checkbox. So let's go to the big component over here, which is the text field. And the text field, usually in companies, it's the hardest sell for you to use Material, right? Is the text field, at least from my experience. Probably you have a different one. Let it in the comments for me to know what is the hardest point for you to adopt Material in your company, right? But let's go to the MUI text field, all right? And so in the MUI text field, you can just disable the animations in a really easy way. So let's go to the Material UI documentation. And when we open components, we can go to the text field, right? So over here at the bottom, we have the text field. Where is the text field? It's here. And when you open the text field, all right, basically, oh, my computer is so slow. Basically, in the text field over here, you will see that some of them are, for example, this one, but this one still has animation. So if you keep scrolling, some of them, they will be always expanded by default. And this is the shrink property that you send to the label. So we can open this source code over here. We can scroll to the bottom of this source code and we will look for that shrink over there. So over here, you can see that we have this input label props. So we can copy this one, go to our VS Code over here and say, so I want the input props to be of type shrink. So when you click and save that one, you will see that my text fields by default will start expanded, and there is no animation for it to expand and collapse. This alone sometimes is enough to sell Material UI to your UX designers and everybody else. If not, you can just come over here and type one of the variants, right? And say that you want a variant. And in the variant, you have, if I'm not mistaken, 3 variants. We can see it over here. The variants at the top of the page in Material. So you have the standard, you have the field, and you have the outlined. Usually outlined is the one I have been more successfully convincing UX developers. So you could use that one, but I will use the field for one simple reason, because then I will show you how you can remove the background from that field one, all right? And it will look almost the same as this one. So let's do first the outlined, then I change to the field, and we will remove the background, okay? So when we do that, let's go over here to our page once again, and let's say the field is one of them. So we just do that, and you will see that with the field now, our buttons will look like this. So this is one of the examples again that we are using that border radius over there. All right. So now that we have that, that's fine. You can also use the outlined. As I said, usually the outlined is the one I have been, it's outlined. I think it is outlined, right? Outlined. Yes, it is outlined. So usually is the one that I have been more successful, right? You remove the border radius, as you may imagine, and then I have been quite happy with that one with designers, right? Now, if you have the other one that we had before, so Control Z, and we have the field, now we have a nice challenge. We can go to our CSS and try to override this one. And your first attempt, most probably, would be to come to your text field, right? So when you have the overrides, you probably will be tempted to do this, to do text field, and you will say root, and you will say background color to be, for example, red. Let's imagine that you want to have this one, right? Let's just say instead of being text field is a mu text field. So Material UI text field. When we save this one, you will see that what will happen is not exactly what you expect. So you lost completely the border radius of your component, but you can see that behind this red, you still have the other color there. So let's just open this one and let's inspect what is actually setting the color for us. So if you open now the developer tools over here, and my computer is really slow. If you open the developer tools over there, you can see that over there you will have what's called the input label. And this input label is in reality what you want to override. As a small tip, usually you have this mu input label and then you have root. The component is on the left side, the class is on the right side of the dash, right? So let's copy this for the component name. And now that we have that component name, we can come over here, type that component name, and then we can say that the root of that component name will have a background color of, for example, yellow, just to be really ugly. We are in a way to make this ugly, so let's go hardcore on looking ugly. So now our background for that one is, oops, I changed the wrong place. So I don't want to change this one. And you will see that we now changed the label. But if you want to change also the gray area, you can open this again And now we will look into the input base field, right? And how to check this one. So let me open this to you once again. And I don't know what's happening with my computer, but you can see that now over here we have a new component, which is the new field input. So if you want to change the gray area over there, you actually need to use this component, which is the new field input. So let's close that one. Let's come here to the overrides, and now we will have the new field input, and the new field input will have a root. Oops. We'll have a root, and inside that root, now we can say, for example, a background color of green once again, right? So we will have our label yellow and our background color as green if you want to, right? So now you see that you keep the border radius, you keep everything. You can now customize everything you may need in your components. The last bit that I'm going to show to you is something that you probably saw me struggling a bit during the card trading app series, which is to now set the elevation for the cards in our applications. If you remember, I think between video 3 and 4, I created a card and then I created a paper, and I didn't remember what was the number that I used for the elevation. So you can come now over here and say the new paper will have an elevation by default, right? Elevation of, for example, 12. And this is quite a lot, right? So when I save this one, all my papers in my application will have an elevation of 12. Because I don't have any paper, nothing happened. But I can do the same for the MUI card over here. And I can say elevation, it will be 12 as well. And when I do that, now my card, this bit here, will have a lot of elevation. It will have 12 of elevation. When you use the new MUI card in your application, you don't need to override over and over and over again, because both your papers and your MUI cards will have that as default. People can still override in the specific place if they want to, right? So this is really important for you to notice. This is the default values of each component, but if you really want to, you can always override, okay? So I really hope this will help you convince your bosses and your UX people in the company in order for you to be able to use Material UI. And let me know in the comments if you want to see any specific customization of any component, and I will be happy, to do a video for you with that customization. So please say something in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you like this one, and I hope to see you next week. Bye bye.